If you compare beer with bratwurst,
and cheese with wine,
or even whiskey
with donuts,
then we think you can pair all of these delicious drinks with
murder,
conspiracies,
missing persons,
and more.
Drink with us as you feed your craving for true crime and creepy stories.
All right, let's go. We are doing a fun one today.
Mm-hmm.
A little impromptu, just giving you an update on an episode that we've done.
We promised the people updates, and we did not come through. And so we are now finally coming through on our updates.
What did we not come through on an update on?
Well,
this update came out.
So last October, we released an episode about Suzanne Morphew after remains were found, and these remains were positively identified as belonging to her.
Yeah.
That was October. And we said, as soon as we have information, we're going to let you know. And then at the end of April, I got a text message from one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, Heidi Evan Slots. And she goes, did you see the autopsy report was released? And that was at the end of April, and it is now at the beginning of June. And we are finally
I didn't realize that was at the end of April. But at the same time, that's not too bad. I mean, considering May is probably the busiest month of our whole year, every year.
Yeah.
Because of kids' sports and end of school stuff. It's just nonstop. Those 4 weeks went really fast. So I don't.
But we're here with an update.
I think we're doing good on timing. What are you drinking over there?
A pina colada, because I feel like it's summertime outside.
Yeah. Who makes that pina colada?
So this is by Cutwater, which is, if you've ever had a Cutwater, it isn't shy in terms of APV. So I don't have a script for this episode.
ABV.
Oh. Alcohol by volume.
It's gonna be a fun one.
So this might not even get aired. We might re-record in a couple of days when I've got my wits about me.
No, we're putting that.
So I'm having a pina colada because it has been relatively warm in Colorado for June.
Yeah, no, it has. And when I asked you when I was going to the liquor store, we did things differently. I didn't have to pick.
No,
you wanted me to, and I was like, no. This is a different type of thing. What do you want to
It's for fun.
While we do this. And you said, honestly, I just want a pina colada.
Every summer, I turn into somebody who thinks she should be drinking pina coladas.
Well, had I bought the ingredients, I'm sure I would have made it just as strong. So
I know.
You're going to drink that anyway. When it comes to a pina colada, that's
what I'm drinking.
Drinking on this... Which, good choice, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm drinking on this. I've had a few of these now, and I'm becoming a big fan of it. It is also a mixed drink in a can. So it's Nitro Whiskey Sour, homemade bourbon with fresh lemon and orange juice. Gomi syrup, whatever that is. It's in there. But it is a product of Old Town Distilling Company, which is a Colorado distillery. But I am joining you in the higher ABVs.
What's yours?
This one's 10% alcohol by volume.
Mine's 13.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. But I won't lie. I've, been having a few more drinks than you before this episode. So if anything, I should remain more toasty than you. So you've got me to just scapegoat on.
Well, I'll tell you, a husband and a wife drinking two very, very different drinks of choice is perfectly paired with a story that has nothing to do with either of those drinks. But we are choosing to address it on a random weeknight because it's summer break.
Yep. We're perfectly pairing things that we just want to pair it with.
Yeah. This is the episode where none of the rules make sense and none of the points matter.
Yeah.
Like, whose line is it anyway?
Exactly. Well, or it's like, every now and then you're eating a steak, you should have a red wine with it. right?
But instead, you
instead,
choose
a pina colada.
Or what perfectly paired with drink goes best with a steak, Jason? This isn't a trick question. Steaks and
daiquiris.
yes, steaks and daiquiris. The perfect pairing you never knew you needed,
Coming soon.
but cannot live without.
From Mama Tina.
Mama Tina's steaks and daiquiris.
And Papa Mike. Look out for it. If you know, you know. Okay, so Suzanne Morphew.
Okay, so last October, we published our episode in response to the remains of Suzanne Morphew being found at the end of September.
Right.
Now, if you haven't listened to our Suzanne Morphew episode, I would suggest you go back and listen to the entire thing. However, if you have and you just want a few little reminders, here they are. So on Mother's Day, which was May 2020, Brian Morphew, the husband of Suzanne, woke up very, very early. He had a landscaping job in Broomfield, Colorado. And so he woke up.
But they lived in
Salida.
So
so a significant drive. He got up. When he left, Suzanne was still asleep in bed. And as the day went on, neither Brian nor his two daughters, which were also the daughters of Suzanne, could get a hold of her. And so, a little bit concerned, Brian asked a neighbor to check on Suzanne. Specifically, he asked this neighbor to check to see if her bike was on the premises of their home. When the neighbor went to check on Suzanne, the neighbor couldn't locate Suzanne, nor could the neighbor locate Suzanne's bike. So Brian asked the neighbor to call the police. And
which the bike was like, she was getting into biking
so
quite a bit at the time,
they said
right?
she was an avid biker, but she was new to biking. And
which we all know. When
they
you
said
pick
she
up
biked
something
every
new,
day.
you like it so
Correct.
much. She spent all this money and you do it for like a month and then you stop.
Yes, but apparently she was really into biking. Now, police officers responded while Brian drove quickly back to Salida, doing some suspicious things along the way. And as a result of like police looking for Suzanne, they did find her helmet and they did find her bike, which was kind of discarded off the side of the road. Now, because of evidence and kind of a case developed against Brian was arrested in May 2021. For example, a piece of evidence that prosecutors used to point the finger at Brian was that he was throwing away large trash bags and various like trash receptacles that day. They also had found
like he was heading back. He'd stop at like some
and
like
throw
dumpster and just toss a bag in there.
And there was kind of an unspent like shell casing found on like within the family home. And Brian himself had like admitted to being an alchemist.
Shell casing.
I know,
so
he was a
dumb
hunter.
to me.
You just have to listen to the first episode. We gotta keep moving on.
Gone. Okay. Anyway.
But the most important thing to remember is that he had admitted to kind of creating these tranquilizer cocktails that he would shoot at deer to incapacitate deer so that he could remove their antlers and sell their antlers. And a piece of evidence was this kind of like sheath to a needle that was found in a dryer after investigators searched the home. And part of the like case against Brian was that they said he incapacitated Suzanne using animal tranquilizers. And you just have to remember that.
Yeah.
But Brian's case was dropped after the DA had recovered DNA evidence from within Suzanne's car, and I think also on her bike, that connected to like unsolved sexual assaults in different states.
Yeah.
And the DA just dropped charges against Brian.
Which obviously weren't his DNA.
No, it was an
his.
unsub, as Law and Order SVU would call it. They don't know who this is.
Yeah.
Somebody
it's
unknown.
All the same DNA.
Put DNA inside Suzanne's car, on her bike.
And the same
and that
DNA
person
was
raped
found
women in like Arizona
states.
and Illinois, I think.
Yeah.
And then at the end of April. Oh, and we can't forget that Brian sued
Yep.
the authorities for like $15 million.
I think he was
making the
actively
case
in the
incredibly
lawsuit
complicated.
when we recorded, which
Yes.
I still have no
Which
idea
makes
what happened with
everything I'm about to say, you're either going to go, oh, homeboy did it, or it
Or
literally is
really,
a $15 million
did it take
cover
that
up.
long?
Okay. All right. So at the end of April, the autopsy report was released. And here's some information provided. So Suzanne's death was determined to be a homicide by unspecified means in the setting of butorphanol, azaparone, and medetomidine intoxication.
Sure, you said every one of those correctly.
Obviously. And we're going to talk about what that means in a minute. There was no indication of perimortem trauma, which means injury around the time of death. But that probably had something to do with the fact that none of the bones had any of their residual soft tissue at the time that the remains were discovered. So all of the remains were skeletal. Now, post-mortem toxicology came from the femoral trabecular bone, and that's where they identified the butorphanol.
Is that the femur? Probably.
I'm still just trying to say words.
Oh.
Butorphanol, metabolites, azaparone, and medetomidine.
That was pretty good. I think you nailed them.
I think it's from the femur.
Yeah.
Now, these drugs independently, so the medetomidine is a sedative and a pain reliever, which has been approved for the use in veterinary procedures for animals, specifically dogs. The azaparone, which according to the National Library of Medicine is a tranquilizer used mainly for pigs and elephants. And
Pigs
then
and elephants.
Yes, which I'm just like, it's not like
Just-
a range of animals.
Nope. Just going to
And
jump from the
what
smallest to the biggest.
DNA makes them susceptible to the azaparone? I don't know. And then you have the butorphanol, which is a synthetic opioid or a pain reliever. It's often used as a nasal spray for migraine headaches.
Oh, interesting.
Now, these drugs together, gosh, Brian, I'm so sorry, are marketed as a compounded injectable chemical immobilizer for wildlife, providing pharmacological, reversible analgesia, sedation, and immobilization. It's an animal tranquilizer.
So they are sold together as an animal.
Yes,
Okay.
which homeboy Brian was accused of using the day before his wife went missing.
But I'm sure there's more than one animal tranquilizer.
I don't know.
So he said he made his own cocktails. So he's creating an animal tranquilizer.
There's nothing about the story that makes sense to me anymore.
Is there anywhere that you found that dials out what he used to create these
Not as of yet.
cocktails
And
in
if
quotations?
he's ever charged again, I think the defense's case will rest on two things. That will be one of them, and I'm going to talk about what the other one will be in a minute. Now,
Because some rapist out there has the ability to murder. Why wouldn't they use an animal tranquilizer?
it is
Especially this guy that's doing this in all these other states, maybe start looking at veterinarians that are connected to these states.
We're not done yet. So,
or somebody that works in some sort of animal hospital type place.
We're going to continue with the autopsy report.
Okay.
So the submitted human bones included the skull with mandible, sacrum, multiple ribs, bilateral radii and ulna, a whole bunch of other ones, sternum, right scapula, clavicle, right and left, femora, right and left, tibia and fibula, and multiple vertebrae.
Okay.
The clothing recovered included a pale patterned balaclava, which is like a face covering, a pink and light colored leather work glove, light color, like partially padded bra, a ripped dark blue gray hooded sweatshirt labeled Crested Butte, which is a city here in Colorado, a torn green Nike tank top, Yeti shorts, and a fabric fragment. And I think what's specific there is that is what she would have worn had she chosen to go on a bike ride that morning.
For sure. Yeah.
In addition to the clothing and the bone fragments, one weathered bullet was also recovered, but in the autopsy report, it did not conclusively say whether or not that was tied to this victim's cause of death. Now, the most interesting part...
When you say weathered bullet, is that it's not fired? It's just...
It literally said in the autopsy report, which is what I read, weathered bullet. I think they included the description weathered to suggest that it had been with the remains for however long they had been in their like shallow grave.
So the Morphews are just, holding random unspent cartridges.
So I'm assuming that
that's what I think when I hear bullet is.
But if all her remains are skeletal, it could have lacerated kidney. It could have done all these different things that would not have been suggested on a skeletal remains. Gotcha. I haven't even gotten to the weirdest part yet.
I know. Okay, I do need it. I do need it. And I shouldn't ask this. No, it is. They call it a bullet, even if it's been fired. I'm pretty sure.
That's a question I can't answer. So here's what I find incredibly interesting. So I found one newspaper article which specifically said it. And in looking at the bones that were identified, none of these bones were named. According to this one newspaper article, neither her shoes were recovered at the scene, nor were any of the bones in her feet.
Oh, God.
So what the heck? Like, seriously, what the heck? And when you go through, so I know my bones: cranium, maxilla, mandible, clavicle, scapula, sternum, ribs, vertebrae, pelvis, femur, patella, tibia, fibula, tarsals, metatarsals, phalanges, humerus, ulna, radius, carpals, metacarpals, phalanges.
That was impressive.
Phalanges are not listed anywhere. So where the heck are her toes? Where? And they didn't recover her tennis shoes. So I think it's telling for two reasons.
Do they always list all the
I think
parts?
They would. I will say this. I think that tiny little toe bones, feet bones could have been disrupted by animal life. That makes 100%. Sense to me. 100%.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised that they have everything there.
Here's where I want to recant everything I said in our original episode. If you wanted to make it look like your wife was going on a bike ride, and so you put her in her biking clothes after you had sedated her body, you might just forget to put the shoes on her feet. And that's why she doesn't have any shoes on. Because animals can take little tiny feet bones away. They're not going to take her tennies away. And so this makes me just question absolutely everything. Because I feel like at the end of our last episode, you and I were both squarely in Brian's corner, where we felt for him. We thought he was just kind of a doofus.
Yeah.
And now I'm just going, either there is a massive cover-up in Sacagawea County because they don't want to pay $15 million to this man who they absolutely railroaded. Oh, and here's another thing. I looked into how long does it take if you shoot somebody with a sedative, that's not going to immediately go to their bones. They had to test her bones to find these tranquilizers. And I don't believe getting shot with them the day before and being killed is going to leave remnants in your bones.
It might. I mean,
I looked into it.
Really?
I don't believe it at all.
Well, if you think about it, if he hits her in the leg that needle
injecting
can go
it into her bone.
Oh, that needle can go far enough in
No.
that it's not far from the bone, so it's not going to take a long time. Plus, if she's running and doing things while trying to get away, and this thing's just pumping full, it's poison into her while doing
All
that.
right, so
it's
somebody
going to spread a
dies
lot quicker
and
because
you
her blood is flowing.
You test their bones. You're
pump it,
telling me
like,
that they're
faster
going to
than usual.
find like a COVID vaccine in their femur. I don't believe it.
But the femur part, my wife sees a spider on them. 1 second, we'll be right back. All right, the spider is not here anymore.
Deceased. Cause of death.
I wasn't going
Squishing.
to say it was dead. What if we got listeners that just believe in bringing the spider outside?
We're going to have to agree to disagree and love each other anyway.
We have enough spiders here. The world will be fine without that one. Okay, we were saying
I don't buy that homeboy Morphew could have shot her with a tranquilizer the day before she died, or maybe the day she died, and there would be remnants of it in her bones.
Okay. Yeah.
It seems so calculated and fabricated and manipulated. And
you did some research on whether it goes into the bone or not.
I looked into it and I read like 20 pages about how opioids tested 24% positive in the bones when there was a 98% whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming opioid use is habitual. This would have been a one-time, I'm shooting you with a tranquilizer. I don't think that would metabolize in the body in such a way that it would appear in her bones. And after she's deceased, the metabolization is done anyway.
Yeah.
So there's no bodily function taking place to put chemicals from these drugs into her bones. I don't believe it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely from that perspective skeptical. The reason I thought maybe it could is because, I mean, I don't actually even know if this is true. This is just what I was told. And this is before we were looking shit up on the internet all the time. Like in your hairs, you can see like whether somebody's taken drugs. You can see, like, they can test for LSD. They can test, like, it's the only way you could test for these drugs that actually leave your blood system super fast or your urine system super fast.
But the reason why I believe that is because your hair is constantly growing. It's not like your femur bone is taking what is internalized so that it can grow. She's a grown-ass woman. What part of some
I'd have to look at that. Like,
tranquilizer going into a fatty tissue then goes into the bloodstream and then goes into her bone? And I don't know.
I didn't even know these things seeped into your bones.
So this is what I was saying. I think if Brian ever gets charged again, which I don't think he will, because there's reasonable doubt in the fact that this,
I think there's a lot of reasonable
alternative like DNA is found, it will be on the science.
Yeah.
And so another thing that was very specific in her autopsy report was the chemotherapy that she was undergoing as like a preventative for the cancer that she had fought and came to Colorado, and they're like, it's fresh air. And so can that treatment communicate as these, and that's, I think,
these drugs.
And we've talked about it in different episodes where science gets ahead of itself and you create these man-made tests, but are they accurately communicating the truth of a situation, or are they just communicating what the test is designed to communicate?
Yeah. And this would be a case where that might happen too, because you just have bones that you can test and play with.
And the only way the prosecutor will get around whoever's DNA was found is if they actually identify this guy who like raped women in Arizona. And they're like, so what were you doing in Salida? And he was like, well, I was working on cars and bikes. And this woman came in and I I had to check her mileage. So I opened up her glove box and then I had to remove her bike from the trunk. That's the only way I think he will ever be convicted is if they can explain that DNA.
It wouldn't even need to be cars and bikes. Could, hopped a quick job at the bike shop. I mean, it is a small Colorado mountain town and bikes are big in those towns.
Well, and if she
that bike shop is probably like, yeah, we'll take any drifter help. Yeah. We'll take any drifter help. And this dude just came in and he sees her. He follows her. He learns like, oh, she goes out this time. She does this. She was a pretty lady. Like someone could become obsessed with her. And look, I think Brian's still in the clear. I think for sure the one thing you said that's suspicious is still so speculative. We're still just making things up to pin it on him, is that if he was going to make it look like she went to ride her bike, he forgot to put her shoes on. And therefore, the animals ate her feet and the shoes weren't found. But that's not proof. What is proof is that there is DNA inside the car on her bike, same DNA, and DNA is pretty fucking good these days, especially if you have multiple points.
Good? Is it too good? No, where she has her bike adjusted by some drifter.
This is what I'm going to say.
Is she touches her
in
handlebars.
Her car too, though? In her car too.
She picks up the DNA from her handlebars. And then she touches her glove box. That is touch DNA at its finest.
No, that's too much.
This
she would have had to shake his hand and then get it all over.
Great. This case, I don't think will ever have an outcome.
Okay, it's too much of a coincidence that it matches crimes in multiple states. When I agree. Touch DNA, it's too good.
It's too good.
They don't have a way to know the differences between what is touch DNA and what is actual, like, this happened at the time. Like, there has to be a grade in there, and they haven't been able to figure out that grade. But what does, I think, go past that and prove that all this is connected is when you have multiple. Not just 2, not just 3, but you got 4 to 5 different places. That's when coincidences stop happening. So that's why I say that's still the main guy. That's still who was there and what happened to her. And Brian made some. Also, I actually think that the remains being found. I don't think I said this before, but the remains being found, that actually lets his stupid, suspicious behavior off the hook.
Because
what was he throwing away?
Yeah, if it isn't,
he wasn't throwing body parts away.
It was her feet.
It was her feet. Yeah, he just had this weird foot. Like he was like, I've always wanted to know what is it like to just cut off the feet with shoes.
I go into ride your bike now. You don't have any feet.
That's
pedal your bike now.
Yeah. While she's alive, just sawing them off. Oh. You love this sport more than me.
All right.
Let's see you pedal again.
Well, those are the autopsy findings. And I feel like they don't answer any questions. And in fact,
they raise me.
It makes me go, what is the conspiracy? Because you have a small town that can't afford to pay somebody $15 million, and you need the remains of a deceased woman to support your theory of the crime. And then all of a sudden, these remains magically support your theory of a crime, and I can't decide.
Right.
Is your theory correct?
Forgot. I was wrong before. They weren't in the middle of a lawsuit. It had just finished, right? They owed him.
No, the lawsuit hadn't been settled.
Oh, okay.
He filed it. Remains were found, and that would have determined.
Yeah.
And I don't trust anybody ever anymore.
No, I mean, after everything we've covered and seen, authorities the ends they'll go to sometimes is just ridiculous. And I mean, at this point, especially in America, the way we are right now, and we're seeing authorities take, every advantage they can.
Nothing is real.
Yeah. Like, why wouldn't a small fucking town
for $15 million?
I don't know. Look, if you've lived in an HOA community, you've seen the one that heads up the HOA be batshit crazy because all of a sudden they have some power and they can do whatever they want. So if that starts at such a little level that doesn't get paid, and you get to a city where you've got multiple very high power people there making decisions on this, and it has to do with a large amount of money going in. Is your computer sound on again?
It's not mine. It's your phone right now.
I don't think it is, but I could see some corruption there. Look, I'm not gonna go all conspiracy with it. Outside of maybe covering yourself because you were so gung ho on the husband, that you couldn't let go, which happens all the time. And then you get the suing happening. The cities, they can find the money. They can go to the state, pull us, will you please help us? And so I'm not going to fully go into conspiracy. I think everything here could be exactly how it is. I still don't think it points to the husband though. I think that DNA inside the car, I think the fact that he was actually out of town, and even though at the time it looked very suspicious what he was doing, dropping bags off, well, her body being found, it does, like, what the fuck was in the bags then? What does he have to be so suspicious about? He cleaned everything else up around the scuffle they said happened. Remember that whole fucking story they told during the trial? He cleaned all of it up except the body. Like, and obviously, like, you put the body somewhere, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would he take so much time on a job and so little time on hiding a body? He literally could have taken the body with him, and then he could have skipped off to the mountains right there in Boulder. Broomfield's right next to Boulder. Could have gone way over there, dropped the body off.
You have a plan.
No, he's giving me my plan. Just kidding. He could have gone right over there, so far away, and it actually would have like matched timelines a whole lot better. None of it makes sense. He had no time to go out there and hide this body where it was found and get over to Broomfield.
Well, like we said at the end of our last episode, it will bring you updates as they come about. But we won't forget that at the heart of the story.
Hold on. What's your thought on all this? I've been ranting. You haven't really.
I honestly do not know. I don't know.
Really? Get closer to the microphone, please.
If the reports about it being animal tranquilizer are true, that makes me think that Brian Morphew did something to harm his wife. If those reports aren't true.
If the tranquilizer reports are true.
And
they're exactly what.
And they can prove that whatever scientific method they used to like show that these drugs were in her bones were actually like disseminated into her tissue the day before. I think Brian did it. I don't believe that that's true. Like, I'm not, I didn't study biology in college. I studied it in high school, but I got like a 5 on my IB test. And I'm going to make the conclusion that you don't get shot in fatty tissue.
Yeah. The fatty,
and it immediately goes to your bones.
Yeah.
And after being for years.
Yeah.
They can find it. I don't believe that. And
the
that
thickest
makes
bone
me
of all of them. I don't
go,
know if that makes any difference, but that bone is
I don't
thick
believe
and
any of
dense.
it.
It's the densest bone you have. It is the hardest bone for you to crack.
Because if that's the case, then if I were to die after getting a flu shot, they should be able to find flu in my femur.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And then they should release that, well, this flu shot is actually what killed her. But they won't, because they got to still sell
no,
that
but
flu
what I'm
shot.
saying is like, I tried, and I feel like unless I could call a pathologist, which I will try for you people to call a pathologist and like figure out if after not even 12 hours, after 45 minutes, if a body can metabolize.
Let's ask Papa Mike. He might know.
All right. And let's get ourselves a steak and daiquiri while we do it.
Yeah. Mama Tina even may know. I think.
I don't know. That the autopsy report made me go, this is so convenient. It can't be true.
I don't even think it's
convenient. And if it is true, we were so wrong.
I think they think it's convenient if there was conspiracy to this, and that's the way they decided to handle the autopsy, or that's the most they could do. Also, hey, who found those bones? Who could inject like something like if that's the case?
It was an unrelated investigation, which is why they came about the bones. Do you know what I'm going to take from this?
All right, so I know what you're saying, but honestly, what you're saying is you still kind of agree with me on this, that it doesn't explain Brian away, or it doesn't explain Brian to jail, that he did it. And I mean, we'll see what comes out, any other info or what, they decide to do. But I just don't think there's enough there. You said it earlier, and I completely agree. I don't think there's enough there. In fact, the tranquilizer stuff, it points to a tranquilizer, not a concoction that some wannabe redneck made. Or maybe he is redneck. I can't remember where he's from. But he said he makes he makes it himself. Mm-hmm. So he would have had to get these 3 ingredients from different places, which definitely sounds hard, because one's like from a veterinary clinic, one's from do you even remember what were the other 2?
There was one which was a nasal spray
for but it's not just a normal nasal spray, it's for migraines.
And one was for pigs and elephants.
So strange. Which I can't imagine, like, you're just picking up. Also, if you could tranquilize a pig or an elephant, can't you tranquilize a human with it? Why would you need to mix that with something?
So we wait.
It must be something different in us. Yeah, so we wait. But you're still a remaining question mark.
I say, in the case of Suzanne Morphew, we will wait. And whether we wait for justice or we will wait for a bureaucratic outcome is yet to be determined.
You're not. All right.
But we wait.
Let me ask you a more poignant question. And I do believe you should say the G in that. Poignant. Poignant. You should say it. Do you think Brian could have done it?
Yeah.
Because of this autopsy?
I honestly do. If the
Even
autopsy
the DNA
report is true, yes, because there are more. Okay. If these drugs are truly in her body, mm-hmm. I find it easier to explain away a random dude's touch DNA
that just happened
surfaces.
To rape multiple
She
women.
could have shooken his hand and touched her glove box and her handlebars. And that would explain putting DNA on those parts
But if he
more than some animal tranquilizer.
If Brian actually did kill her, why would he throw random shit away and different? Like, why would
I can't answer
he was
that
smart
question.
enough to get rid of everything else, or at least try, and then he goes and does that?
I don't know.
Any sane person, which he appears to be very sane, would know.
Unless he's killed his wife and then he's not sane. And he had a steak dinner by himself and told officers he ate with his wife. He's not sane. That's the thing, is like, you have to listen to our previous episode where you go, that doesn't add up.
No, but
that
does.
doesn't add up.
He doesn't want to be arrested for it. He knows that they're going
to. Evidence is the DNA, and that could have come from anybody. Because we literally visit mountain towns on a fairly regular basis living in Colorado, and the employees are not from Colorado.
It's the craziest coincidence for it to happen in a murder case.
Well, so watch out for coincidences. And that's how we're going to end this episode. Because there's nothing that makes sense any which way. So watch out for coincidences. Don't leave your house. Don't touch surfaces or shake people's hands. Because you just might be a murder suspect. Anyway, we have to wrap this up.
But well, we've both given our thoughts. We'll see what happens. It's an interesting one.
I would bet $5 nothing happens. It will.
Get close to the microphone. Yeah.
I bet $5.
Well, it's 13.
Nothing
13%
happens. And I'll tell you why. There's enough evidence to suggest that it wasn't Brian, but an ample amount of evidence to suggest it was.
But it's all.
So it will live in the purgatory, which is another city in Colorado, right?
Yes.
Forever.
Well, I think you're right. But the amount of evidence that points to Brian is circumstantial, and the amount of evidence that shows he didn't do it is not circumstantial.
No, all of it is circumstantial.
DNA. No, but DNA is not circumstantial. They still have to, like,
you cross paths with like 5 serial killers in your life. So homeboy touches your shoulder. Doesn't mean if you die of a heart attack that you were killed.
Look, how do you even make that statistic? I know you read it. How do you even create that? Right. They say 95% of stats thrown at you and percentages thrown at you are bullshit.
100% of people who listen to our podcast
I just
really enjoy it.
And that's how that happens.
And 100% of people who don't listen to our podcast hate their lives because of it. So statistics matter, my friend.
No. We'll keep it updated. Thanks for listening. This was a really quick, I hope quick. We'll see what the time is. But this is an update on Suzanne Morphew, and it's still not done. And we'll see what happens to Brian and the family there, and see if Susan ever gets justice. It's kind of looking like she won't. I agree. Unless they catch this other guy and he admits it. Which happens. So in maybe 30 years, this dude's in jail and he's like, I killed this chick in Colorado and she ended up on TV. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the end of it. And he's like, I made it another 30 years. And May's like, guess what? This guy told me.
All right.
All right, you guys. Thanks for listening. I love you.